Hello YouTube. In many places of our planet there are mysterious creations of human hands, mazes, labyrinths. Since the Paleolithic age, mazes and spirals have been known to man. Sun worshippers left us their images on stones, on mammoth tusks, and later this form was repeated in temple rings, in ancient Russian embroidery, in ritual dances. We will not look at the dances today, but at a very strange labyrinth in Russia. Vlasovka is a village in the Gribanovsky district of the Voronezh region, 142 kilometers southeast from the city of Tambov, 600 kilometers south of Moscow. It is part of the Bolshe-Alabukskaya rural settlement. It was founded in the middle of the 18th century by the peasants of Ukrainian origin, settled in the area by Count Voronezh. Vlasovka is a small village, but for the local places in the area, it can be said that it is a strategically located village. If you look for the Vlasovka labyrinth information in the internet, Russian sites, you will get very sensational results. Secrets of the dwarfs from the labyrinth, sorcerer's lair, magicians from the underground, mysterious and nasty tiny humanoids, a skull with the evidence of trepanation of triangular shape. It refers to surgical intervention in which a hole is drilled or scraped into the human skull. Also, stories about dangers awaiting Soviet archaeologists at the excavations, reluctant locals who warned against disturbing local mounds, breakdowns of equipment, cut off head of the horse that was left by the camp of the archaeologists, and archaeologists that finally fled from the area, but some of them died under mysterious circumstances. Also added to the mix was the story of the Soviet military pilot shot over Mongolia in August of 1945. The pilot was actually from the same general area as the Vlasovka labyrinth. He survived but was imprisoned by humanoid creatures no taller than 45 centimeters. When he finally escaped to the world that we know, X-rays determined that the pilot had a triangular aperture in his head, in the same shape as the skull discovered in the Vlasovka labyrinth. Well, such internet tales are basically hoax, fake stories around a very unusual finding made by Soviet archaeologists, and the research continued for some years. It is not just to create money for the Russian tabloids when stories like that are published. No, some of it, according to the archaeologists, comes from malicious intent, from the desire to obfuscate the find and maybe to keep away curious population. Unfortunately for Russia, the area had been and has been targeted by the so-called outlaw archaeologists, черные археологи in Russian, who raided the mounds or kurgan and stole the contents and later selling them to private collectors. This happened in several post-Soviet countries after 1991, and I will not go into full description here of the practice and what's going on and so forth. Suffice it to say, on some occasions, archaeologists were murdered, but not in this case. So, such tales were mostly lurid tabloid nonsense about Vlasovka, with the undertone of the paranormal to stir up interest and probably prevent the work of genuine archaeologists. However, this is a complicated case. But to be fair, are all of the stories really hoaxes? I understand there is a question about the lost expedition of Nikolai Prokhorov and Irina Pisareva, if they ever existed. Or more precisely, what if some group interested in the labyrinth for whatever reasons acted under their names? Look, I never promised you easy cases from Russia. Personally, I do think that this was a complicated hoax to steer away genuine archaeologists and others. So let us look at the Vlasovka discoveries and mysteries. One of the people who helped reveal the facts was candidate of historical sciences, associate professor of the Department of Russian History of the Voronezh State Pedagogical University, Valery Berezutsky. He wrote articles about the discovery back in 1991 in Sovetskaya Archeologia magazine, issue number 3, or Soviet Archaeology magazine. And then, after the hoax became disseminated in local newspaper, he also published an article and was interviewed by a major Russian newspaper. I also looked at other sources. It was Berezutsky who organized and participated in the excavation of mounds near the village of Vlasovka from 1985 to 1996, together with students of the archaeological expedition of the Pedagogical University. An underground labyrinth was discovered by Voronezh archaeologists in 1980s. The findings of the Voronezh researchers in the barrows or mounds or kurgans near Vlasovka are really unique. Already, the first excavations in 1985 revealed evidence of the Bronze Age from the 3rd to 2nd millennia BC. On the Vlasovka mounds, they encountered an ancient ritual of the tribes who lived in the Bronze Age. The grave structures of their creators were tightly clogged with clay. As usual, sheer chance helped to discover these structures and explore them. For a long time, there were no signs of a grave pit located in the center of the mound, although they were buried deep, about 4 meters. There was only clay. The archaeologists sat down to have a snack, and then one of the local tractor drivers asked for permission to collect clay for his farm, recalled Valery Berezutsky. The archaeologist let him do it. A little later, the tractor driver came up to them with a guilty face. He apologized and said that he caught some bones when he was excavating with a bucket. At the bottom of the grave pit were indeed the skeletons of buried people. Other amazing finds were also made. There are a flute made from the tubular bones of a large bird, richly ornamented clay vessels, and bone ornaments. On the flute, thanks to the clay baking and the limited air supplies, even the leather cord from the connection of the elements was preserved. Seeing these materials, Arsen Tigranovich Sinyuk, Doctor of Historical Sciences, Professor, Head of the Department of Homeland History at the Pedagogical University, was quite surprised. And soon the archaeological expedition settled in Vlasovka for a long time. About 20 mounds were studied. Unique data were obtained about the Bronze Age, nomads of the Roman Empire, Sarmats, and the nomads of the Golden Horde era of the 13th, 14th centuries, when the Mongols invaded Europe. And in 1988, during the excavation of one of the mounds, the archaeologists found a large gravesite. Some were 8 by 8 meters. The find promised something out of the ordinary. In addition, here and there in the embankment, there were fragments of Crimean amphora, traces of wakes for the deceased. Well, get the bags ready to put the gold in, joked Valery Berezutsky's colleagues. But as far as we know, no gold artifacts were discovered. And as a result, the remains of a complex underground structure were found. In its center was a large square-shaped pit, obviously once designated to install a wooden or stone pillar. Was it for an idol? Several small human bones lay on the floor of the pit. The shape of the structure resembled a yurt with a domed ceiling to which numerous winding narrow passages led. Together, they formed a labyrinth. Some of the passages were underground. Some were open, but the center of the building could only be accessed on all fours. In the passages, found fragments of ancient dishes, Crimean amphora and jugs, sheep bones, several skulls of horses with front limbs. Yurta, for those who don't know, it's a portable round tent covered with skins or felt and used as a dwelling by several distinct nomadic groups in the steppes of Central Asia. The structure consists of an angled assembly or lattice work of wood or bamboo for walls, a door frame, ribs, poles, rafters, and a wheel, crown, compression ring, possibly steam band. We don't know. Now, let's get back to the findings. One skull contained iron rods with bit shanks, metal rods for better horse control. The bit shanks allowed to establish the time of the creation of the labyrinth, from 8th to 9th century AD. This is the period of the domination of the tribes of the Khazar Khaganate, Alan, Iranians, Volga Bulgarians, Khazars themselves, and smaller nomadic Turkic groups. One of them created the mysterious structure. Or was it some other tribe, now forgotten, who created it? The findings of the archaeologists allow this conclusion. In the center of the labyrinth were ceremonial actions, sacrifice of horses, sheep, and human beings. After the rites, the creators of the labyrinth completely covered it with earth, with soil. Who and why created the Vlasovka labyrinth? What is the purpose of the rites? These questions are not answered so far, but there are hypotheses. The labyrinth is unique. There is no similar one in Europe or Asia. Russian archaeologists Pletnyov and Vinnikov suggested that the Vlasovka labyrinth may have been the place to be initiation into adult age by members of society. They initiated young men and women to become adults. What was its purpose? Judging by the findings there, the priests performed various rituals, including sacrifices. Animals were sacrificed, and judging by the human bones found, although human remnants may have been brought there for other purposes. Anyway, Tangle Passages, according to archaeologists, served for the rite of initiation, the introduction of man, human being, to the pagan religion, a kind of trial for young men or women. The subject, in complete darkness, had to find his or her way to the center of the labyrinth, to the priest who conducted the rite of initiation. The Vlasovka labyrinth, on one hand, is unique, as it has not yet been found its exact counterparts in the surrounding areas. But there was another labyrinth in the Voronezh district, and I will talk about it later. Well, on the other hand, the labyrinth is a very ancient form of the device of cult centers, which are found in the areas of the northern European coast, the Mediterranean, and even in the eastern European plain. At 1 kilometer from the labyrinth is a mound or kurgan, which was also excavated by archaeologists. In their opinion, it belonged to the early Volga Bulgarians. By dating it, it also corresponds to the labyrinth, and therefore the burial and the labyrinth may belong to one people. So, it looks like the Vlasovka labyrinth has nothing to do with dwarfs or inhabitants of Atlantis, but it carries a lot of mysteries concerning the rites that were performed there. What do the Vlasovka mounds hide? Are there similar buildings in the area? Why was the sanctuary not habitable, and in the opinion of Russian archaeologist Sinyuk, served either for short-term or even one-time use? Well, the hypothesis about the civilization of dwarfs is nothing more than the invention of one of Voronezh journalists, according to Professor Berezutsky. far-fetched, evil, and harmful falsification, as he calls it. It does not stand up to the slightest criticism, again, according to Berezutsky. In fact, Irina Pisareva, a student of the Voronezh University, had never taken part in the excavation that he was engaged in. If any, there was no trepanned skull, no archaeologist Nikolai Prokhorov who led subsequent expedition, the reality of which again is not established. At the same time, these participants of the 1980s archaeological expeditions are alive and well to this day, and in the village there are not even signs of mystical phenomena. By the way, the Vlasovka inhabitants themselves are still offended that they were enrolled into the ranks of magicians and sorcerers, according to Berezutsky. Modern residents of Vlasovka treated the expedition pleasantly, brought them potatoes, watermelons, apples for the archaeologists, so that the students would not starve. Students also helped local grandmothers cut wood for some, repair the fence for others. Recalled Valery Berezutsky, students from the university who were engaged in this archaeological excavations. Well, they talked a lot with the locals, but no one ever scared archaeologists with horror stories about dwarfs, mysticism, and sorcerers. The archaeologists shared dinners with the mechanics in the field, talked to the old-timers, fished together in the lake, and talked about anything. But no one, again, ever scared the scientists with underground passages, dwarfs, or any evil spirits. At first, the locals were interested in excavations, and when it became clear that there was no gold found inside the mounds, the interest faded. This is the normal reaction that is observed annually at the excavations. It is a lie that Vlasovka is full of sorcerers, according to the archaeologists. In Bolshaya Labucha lived a woman who was treating all diseases and still does till now. The archaeologists heard that there are more similar healers in the area. They heard that some man who used to treat people was also there, but Berezutsky says that you will find such people everywhere, not only in Vlasovka. On their last visit to the excavation in 1996 to the site, the village was much less populated. Many of the people they talked to before have died, and basically there are no young people in the village. Now, newcomers from Moscow, they say, bought up several houses with plots, built their fortresses to defend from whom no one really knows. And the question is not from dwarfs. This is quite interesting. It's not that usual. I mean, yeah, people from the big cities buy up lands, but fortifications. Today, as well as many centuries ago, the mystery of the Vlasovka labyrinth, covered with the soil today, is waiting for a solution. So to summarize, nothing really has been excavated officially since 1996. The outlaw archaeologists had worked in the area and of course appropriated artifacts. They still operate in the Voronezh region area, probably around Vlasovka too, looking to the mounds. Newcomers from Moscow have built up strong dwellings in this distant from the capital area, rural Russia. We do not know who they fortify against, but no need to dramatize. Maybe they just built expensive dacha, country houses, or maybe they are there to observe and to guard. So that we understand the situation. Currently, the maze is buried. The strange labyrinth is covered with soil. Someone tried to demonstrate that the locals scared the archaeologists off and did not get along with them. And yet, I remember one comment from the discussions of those who are interested in this case in the Russian web. The common being that the Russian archaeologists themselves were not interested to have further research there. They tried to keep the labyrinth closed off. But why? Is there something else that we do not know? I do want to add a few words here. The FSB, or the security police, something like the KGB of modern Russia, are quite active in the Voronezh district too, against outlaw archaeologists. And I'm sure they keep a watchful eye on those who come without invitation. So I wouldn't recommend to anybody to go and try to do unauthorized excavations in Russia. The FSB knows what's going on, because in my opinion they keep an eye on this area. But we'll get into some other discussion about similar subjects. So here are some of the scientific descriptions from the 1991 article written by and published in Soviet Archaeology magazine. The reference is to the 1988 excavations. Those who are interested in the complete article can find it in Russian in issue number 3, Sovetskaya Archaeologia. In 1988, during the study of the second Vlasovka, or Vlasovsky burial ground of the Bronze Age and the early Iron Age, located 2 kilometers north of the village of Vlasovka in the Gribanovsky district of the Voronezh region, excavations by Sinyuk and Berezutsky, a very interesting and completely unique structure was revealed, an underground labyrinth, the area of which is about 254 square meters. The structure is positioned precisely to the cardinal directions. The construction of the center of the labyrinth is quite complex. It was entered by sub-rectangular wells entrances with an area of 0.9, 3.6 square meters. The depth of the wells from the mainland level is 1.5 meters. From each of them, there were passages laid in the mainland or slightly above the floor of the well, or at its level. The passages were intertwined, but in general, they were a maze approaching a square shape. The width of the passages is 0.75 to 1 meter. Only in places it is 0.5 to 1.5 meters. The height is 1 to 1.3 meters, but there are sections with a lower height. All wells are connected by passages both along the perimeter and through the center, where a yurt was built and also deepened into the mainland. In its floor, a pit with a diameter of 0.2 meters was cleared, in which, according to the researchers, there was a stone idol. From above, the yurt had a dome structure which was hidden, like the labyrinth itself, under the ground and smeared with the same mainland clay. The idol is not preserved. It was probably taken out after the labyrinth ceased to function as a cult complex. Next to the pit in which the idol stood, the bones of an adult were revealed. These are probably the remains of a ritual sacrifice. In addition, in the passages of the labyrinth, in its eastern half, 6 animal sacrifices were found: the skulls of a horse, the bones of a sheep. In one of them, along with the horse's skull, there were bits and bit shanks. In the southeastern corner of the labyrinth, next to the well, on the floor of one of the passages, lay an altar stone in the form of a large quartzite slab, with traces of smoothing on the outer surface. By the way, during the floods in 2016, rescue teams from the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations worked in the area, improvised helicopter landing site, and the work was inspected by a special commission of the ministry. So attention is being paid to the area. We just do not know the extent of this attention and whether it is due to the labyrinth and the mounds around it. And here is something written by one of the people who commented on the story of the labyrinth. Listen carefully. "You will not believe it, stated the commentator, but He tried to get there 4 times to the area, to the site, on a motorcycle, but something stopped him. Then the chain would break, then the wheels or tires would lose air, or the engine would stall. And the last time he drove the carburetor became unscrewed for some reason. And he realized that he was clearly not expected there. I just want you to realize, in the Voronezh region, there was another quite interesting, somewhat strange discovery. The Mustachian settlement and the sanctuary Labyrinth is in Lukadonia Valley of the Ostrogorsky district of the Voronezh region, on the right bank of the Potudani River. In 1957, an archaeological expedition of the Institute of Archaeology of the USSR Academy of Sciences, under the leadership of Labyrinth, discovered the Mustachianskaya settlement for science. The Mustachiansky Labyrinth is located on the territory of the Mustachiansky settlement. Such stone structures are well known all over the world, most often called cromlechs, ancient observatories. In 1985, near the village of Mustachia, 20 kilometers from Voronezh, an unusual object for archaeologists was explored, a labyrinth. The excavations were carried out by the Voronezh Pedagogical Institute students and teachers. In 1986, the author of this news item was lucky enough to work on this expedition on a high promontory that overlooked a wide valley where the Don, Devitsa, and Potudany rivers merge. They found a maze made of chalk stones, of which there were plenty in the area. Whole chalk mountains formed the river bank. The chalk stones were neither fitted together nor held together by anything. The object consisted of 6 concentric ellipses with crosspieces or lintels. The walls of the labyrinth at the time of its construction did not exceed 0.5 meters, and the largest diameter about 40 meters. This is several times larger than the size of the stone labyrinths of the Russian north. No traces of ancient settlements were found anywhere in the nearest district. 2,000 square miles were investigated. So the maze was not a utilitarian purpose. After all, this is not housing, nor an industrial or economic building, nor a protective structure. Why would the ancient people spend time and effort to build something that had no functional purpose? The Bronze Age Mustachiansky Labyrinth is the only one found in Central Russia of that kind, I guess. So you have 2 now that are not found anywhere else. Vinnikov, Senyuk. This was found in what I just read in the book that Vinnikov and Senyuk put together. По дорогам минувших столетий. Археологи о древней истории Воронежского края, or on the roads of the past centuries, archaeologists about the ancient history of the Voronezh region. It was published, well, in 1990. There are a lot of ancient man-made hills, mounds, scattered across the expanses of the Don River. They stand on the high banks of rivers and even far away in the field on the watersheds. Many riddles and secrets are kept by those mounds or kurgans. There are many hypotheses, assumptions, and legends about them, but no one has yet given clear answers to the questions about who, when, and why started creating them. Kurgan is a Turkic, not Turkish, but of the Turkish background word. It probably came from the Turkic root kur, to put, to arrange. The Russians borrowed this word and used it in the meaning of ancient grave hill, small hill as well as boundary sign. One of the scientific hypotheses about the mounds suggests that they are a kind of monuments to the dead, similar to those that are still being erected today. The mound is also a dwelling, house of the deceased. After all, the ancients believed that after death, one of the parts of the human soul remains next to the buried body forever. Therefore, it is necessary to take care of it and build a shelter for it, similar to the one in which a person lived during his or her lifetime. Therefore, the rounded mound imitated a yurt, the dwelling of a nomad. The dwelling of the nomad, in turn, repeated the roundness of the earth, the universal home of all living beings. But the mounds are not just houses of the dead. The mound, kurgan, is also a cult, sacred place, an altar. In the mounds, different peoples buried only the chosen ones, priests, leaders, and great warriors. In the most ancient burial mounds of the Bronze Age, 3rd to 2nd century BC, 1000 BC, only priests were buried. In priestly burials, archaeologists find so-called voluntary companions of the priest to the other world, usually young women, musical instruments in the forms of flutes, bone percussion hammers, and horn amulets, incense burners with sacred herbs, animal sacrifices, wooden priestly bowls for the sacred drink. Wooden priestly bowls for the sacred drink. Bronze Age priests are distinguished by artificially deformed skulls which were given an elongated shape. But not all the mounds were originally rounded and uniform in shape. Such they have become as a result of the influence of the forces of nature, wind and rain. This effect occurs with many buildings that are abandoned. Well, you can see what will happen in a few years to the place where a house once stood after some time that it being abandoned. It will be covered with weeds, spread out, and will look like a small mound. In fact, the mounds or kurgans are complex architectural structures, not simple mounds over graves. Mounds were found which, when viewed from the above, had the shape of a spider or a turtle. Surprisingly, it turns out that many burial mounds had the shape of pyramids in ancient times. Stone pyramids were built in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, in ancient America. In Russia, the step pyramids from the steppes were built from the turf tiles, which were laid like the stone blocks of the pyramids of ancient Egypt. On the mounds of the Middle Dawn, however, such pyramids have not yet been found. Many of them have been destroyed by plowing, and the soil conditions of the Don forest steppe are such that these signs of the presence of sod blocks on the Middle Dawn are not visible. It is possible that the new methods of archaeological research will allow us to establish many constructive techniques of ancient builders, which are hidden from our eyes today. In the early 1980s, other secrets of the mounds were discovered. They were associated with calendars and ancient observatories for observing celestial bodies. Groups of mounds actually imitated constellations, the Milky Way. Okay, now a few words about Voronezh and the region. It is over 52,000 square kilometers in size, and I could talk for hours about its mysteries. Those who read my books and saw me on various TV programs may remember my discussions of the 1989 Voronezh UFO case and more. This was a very interesting case. What is even more interesting is the hostile UFO conduct in the relatively nearby military area where top Soviet pilots encountered strange craft. Borisogledsk. From 1974 to 1989. Hundreds of UFO sightings, mostly on radars. There was, by the way, an eerie, strange black cloud too, it hovered over the area, 1974. Pilots who had their aircraft enter it suffered various effects. Things got so bad that one local commander requested the help of the top secret Setka program. This was the military/academic research of anomalous aerial phenomena. That's what they called UFOs. Colonel Plaksin, whom I mentioned quite a lot in my lectures and books, from the Setka, has files full of cases from that time and from that area. In my books, co-authored by Philip Mantle, we presented evidence that we found. Also, that the strange talk about humanoids, just like as with the swimmer's case, and the strangeness of the Voronezh nuclear power station, not too far, and the spatial temporal weirdness discovered by Nova Hopper's area. And the researcher, it was researched by Genrikh Silanov, my acquaintance of many years and one of the original UFO research group leaders in the 1989 case. So there's more to tell my audience about this fascinating part of Russia, and I'm quite certain that the Russian government knows quite well, or at least is trying to find out what goes on there and protects it from uninvited guests. But I'm not sure if it can protect from all the guests. Some of them come from the sky and are quite technologically advanced that the Russian Air Force or the American Air Force cannot deal with it. Anyway, this fascinating part of Russia had mysteries in its past, inhabited by basically unknown people. And it has mysteries in the recent times too, recorded, registered, and then classified. What a region. So I will bring you more videos about Eurasia. If you can support my research, please see the links in the description to this video. Thank you for your attention. Please subscribe to my channel and please tell others.